Story 1. Mia and the Witch Lady, Ties That Transcend Time. The fall breeze was crisp, and a medley of orange and red leaves had begun to blanket my backyard. Every October, I'd get into the spirit of Halloween by decorating my house with spooky ornaments and setting up a haunted maze for the neighborhood kids. But this particular Halloween was different, for it was the first time we'd spend it in our newly bought ancestral home. The move into the old family home had been a decision born out of nostalgia. It was where my mother had grown up, and she had always regaled us with tales of her childhood spent running up and down the creaky stairs, chasing after her siblings. But while my two older children, Ben and Sophie, adjusted well to the new setting, my youngest, Mia, had an aversion to the upstairs section of the house. During our first week, Mia refused to go upstairs alone. If she had to use the bathroom, she'd resist for hours or pester her siblings until one of them accompanied her. I initially dismissed it as the usual hesitations children often feel in unfamiliar surroundings. But as days turned into weeks, her apprehension became a concerning pattern. One sunny afternoon, I sat Mia down in the living room, the golden rays of the setting sun streaming through the vintage curtains. "Sweetie," I began gently, "can you tell me why you're so scared of going upstairs?" She hesitated, her blue eyes darting away. "The old witch lady," she finally whispered, her voice quivering. My eyebrows knitted in confusion. "What old witch lady?" "The one near our bedroom closet," she elaborated, her voice barely above a whisper. "She has wild hair all over the place, and her hands, they look like claws." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I tried to keep my composure. "Honey, there's no one in the house but us." "But Mommy," Mia's eyes filled with tears, "she's there, all hunched over and tiny, and she stares at me." This was troubling. Our home was old, but there were no signs of any squatters or stray animals. Moreover, Mia's description didn't match anyone we knew. To ease her fears, I decided to indulge Mia's imagination. Maybe if I could show her there was nothing in the closet, she'd get over her fear. That evening, armed with a flashlight, I took her hand and we walked upstairs. Together, we checked every nook and cranny of her room, especially the closet. As expected, there was no witch lady. A few days passed, and the incident with the witch lady was starting to fade. My family was invited to my parents' house for dinner. Over homemade pies and roasted turkey, we caught up, laughing at shared memories. The topic of our ancestral home came up, and I mentioned Mia's odd fear of the upstairs and her description of the witch lady. I tried to keep the tone light, but there was an unmistakable shift in the room's energy. My mother, usually the life of the party, went unusually quiet. She rose from her seat and walked over to an old wooden cabinet that housed family albums. She pulled out an aged black and white photograph and handed it to me. The photo depicted a frail, elderly woman. Her hair was unkempt, almost wild-looking, but it was her hands that caught my attention. They were twisted and deformed, with large knots at the knuckles, making them resemble claws. Her posture was hunched, and she sat in an old wheelchair. "Mia," I beckoned, my voice shaky. "Is this the lady you saw?" My daughter's face drained of color as she nodded, her eyes wide with terror. "That's my grandmother," my mom spoke up, her voice heavy with emotion. "Your great-grandmother." I looked at my mother, my mind racing to make sense of it all. "But Mom, Mia never met her." My mother took a deep breath. She had severe rheumatoid arthritis. The condition deformed her hands and made her hunch over. Because of her condition, she was confined to that wheelchair for the latter part of her life. I remembered faint tales of my great-grandmother, how she was bedridden during her last days and had passed away in the very house we now lived in. But I had never seen her pictures, let alone shown them to Mia. "The crazy hair," my mom continued, tears forming in her eyes, "was because she had to rely on someone else to comb it. Sometimes it remained unkempt. The room was enveloped in a somber mood. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and the realization was both astounding and terrifying. Somehow, Mia had seen my great-grandmother, someone she had no knowledge of. That night, as we returned home, the earlier festive spirit of Halloween was overshadowed by the chilling revelations of the evening. While I still couldn't fathom how Mia had witnessed an apparition of our ancestor, I felt an odd connection to our family's past. It was as if, through Mia, my great-grandmother was reaching out, reminding us of the ties that bind us through time and generations. While Halloween approached with its ghosts and ghouls, we had encountered a specter far more intimate and inexplicable. The festive decorations now seemed trivial compared to the eerie connection my daughter had experienced. Mia never mentioned the witch lady again. Perhaps the acknowledgement of her presence and understanding her identity was all that was needed. The ancestral home, with its creaky stairs and old memories, held more mysteries than we had ever imagined. And as Halloween night descended upon us, we couldn't shake off the eerie feeling of being closely watched by the ghosts of our own past.
Story 2. The Boys at the Apple Tree. Fall has always been my favorite season. The chilly breezes, golden leaves, and the enchanting vibe of Halloween. But the autumn of 2011 changed my perspective forever. We moved into an old home, previously occupied by the staff of the mansion next door. Little did we know, our cozy new residence had an unsettling history of its own. The house was a charming little place, nestled amidst tall trees and overlooking the grandeur of the mansion. The aroma of fallen leaves and rain filled the air. Initially, it felt like a new beginning. But like the swiftly falling autumn leaves, our excitement soon faded, replaced by a lingering sense of unease. One crisp morning as we were buckling up for a drive, my toddler daughter glanced over to the neighbor's backyard. She gleefully waved, shouting a cheerful, "Hi!" Curious, I turned my gaze to see who she was greeting. To my surprise, the yard was empty. No one was there. "Sweetie, who are you waving at?" I asked, trying to keep my voice as light as possible. "The boys picking apples," she replied innocently. I was taken aback. There wasn't a single apple tree in sight. I tried to dismiss it as just another quirk of a child's imagination, but deep down, something felt off. A few weeks later, I met the lady who lived in the mansion. Making small talk, I narrated the curious incident of the apple pickers. The color drained from her face. She hesitated, then shared. "We had an old apple tree, stood there for over a century, just had it cut down recently." I felt a shiver run down my spine, but that was just the beginning. On numerous occasions, my daughter mentioned a family, a couple and their 2 sons. She described them vividly and claimed they resided with us. They had supposedly died in a fatal car accident. While I initially dismissed it as her active imagination, her interactions with the family began to grow more frequent and detailed. At dinner, she'd point towards our empty kitchen and ask, "Can't you see them? They are right there." One evening, as she played with her toys, she suddenly laughed and said, "Gordy is so funny." Startled, I asked who Gordy was. "The little boy from the family. He's my friend," she replied with a grin. From then on, Gordy became a frequent companion. He accompanied us on car rides, played hide and seek, and even sat beside her during meals. As the season matured and Halloween approached, our house's eerie atmosphere thickened. One fateful night, the chilling climax occurred. I was giving my daughter a bath. Stepping out for merely a second to grab her towel, an icy gust of wind slammed the bathroom door shut. Rushing back, I struggled to open the door. Frantic cries and splashes echoed from inside. When I finally managed to force it open, my daughter was at the farthest corner, her eyes fixated on the empty space beside the tub, her voice a mere whisper. "The mean man. He's angry." After that night, she adamantly refused to even set foot near the bathroom. The memories of her sheer terror played on a loop in my mind. A few days later, as Halloween decorations filled our neighborhood, my daughter, with a tone much older than her years, said, "They're leaving, but he isn't." I froze. "Who isn't?" I managed to ask. She simply pointed towards the bathroom. We couldn't stay any longer. As the last remnants of autumn disappeared, we packed our bags, the haunting experiences pushing us out. Yet, as we left the old home, I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I turned around to see no one. The bathroom window of our old home was slightly open, and in the chilling wind that blew, I thought I heard a whisper, "Stay." It's been years since that incident. We've moved, started anew, but every cold breeze, every creaking floorboard, every dripping tap reminds us of the mean man from that bathroom. Sometimes, late at night, I can still feel that cold hand on my shoulder, a sinister reminder that we were never truly alone.